Have you ever experienced something so crippling in your life that has made you feel broken? I have. Are you someone who has a giving heart but is struggling to feel good themselves? Are you consistently putting your needs aside to take care of everyone else? If so, you're not alone. Giving starts with giving to yourself so that you are able to give of yourself to other people. Isn't it time you took back control and discovered what makes you tick? Join me in my journey and find out how you can feel better about yourself, live your best life, and share that with others. Thinking of yourself, it doesn't make you selfish, it makes you brave. I'm Nelia, and this is the Giving Starts With You podcast. Welcome, everyone, to another episode of the Giving Starts With You podcast. I'm your host, Nelia Hutt. Today, I am so excited. I've met a new friend. Her name is Meagan O'Nan. Welcome to the show, Meagan. How are you?
Great. Thanks for having me.
Absolutely. I'm so happy you're here, and I'm glad to have met you today. I love meeting new people, and you can just tell when someone is genuine, even like through the screen, and I feel that with you. So this is going to be great.
Yeah, for sure. I feel the same way.
Thank you. So I'm going to let you guys know a little bit about who Meagan is. Um, she's incredible, by the way. So Meagan O'Nan is an award-winning author, keynote speaker, and vulnerable storytelling expert. She is the author of the award-winning book, Creating Your Heaven on Earth, and Courage, Agreeing to Disagree is Not Enough. I love those titles. Her third book is forthcoming and will be published January 2023 with New Degree Press. Meagan is also a member of the Forbes Coaches Council, where she produces regular content for Forbes.com. Meagan is passionate about creating deeper connections through speaking, workshops, and through her executive speaker coaching. Her approach is unique in that she uses storytelling as a way to overcome differences and generate healing. For the last decade, she has been a significant voice for the LGBTQ community in Mississippi, speaking with pastors, university representatives, and classes on the radio and on the news as a voice offering unity and cooperation. I love this. Meagan now lives with her wife, Claire, and their daughter, Merritt, who is the sweetest thing in Yorkville, Mississippi. Welcome, welcome, welcome to the show. We're happy to have
Thank
you.
you. Same. Let's dig in.
Yeah. So today, we could talk about so many different topics, but something I think would help my audience today, and I know you're an expert in, is talking about forgiveness and how that can help the people at home really start to heal, really start to take care of themselves better, because we know that we cannot take care of other people until we take care of us, our
Yeah.
self-care, our self-love. And I
Mhm.
think that's one of the foundations is forgiveness. Would you agree?
Yeah, for sure. And it can feel overwhelming. It can feel complicated. And everybody has their theory on how forgiveness works. And I have found it to be simple. I don't think that there's a big giant formula that you have to follow. I think for my journey, as a gay woman in the South and being rejected and having to find a way to love myself, what I found helpful in coming back to Mississippi and being here is actually sharing my story. You talked about storytelling in my introduction, and that's really the thing that has helped me forgive myself and love myself, and also forgive others and love others in a fuller way. And what I mean by that is, over the years, I've shared my story from a place of vulnerability. Like, I let people in. This is my experience. This is how it made me feel. And because of the compounding nature of constantly sharing my stories and letting people into my experience, conversations are created. People end up apologizing. I have hard conversations with people, or my parents or family members or friends or people who have hurt me or people that I've hurt. And I've just found that storytelling has been like that golden thread throughout all of those forgiveness talks that I've had with other people that have brought me healing over the years. And it hasn't been for me like, I've had relationships that have healed, right? Through tough conversations, tough things happen, we talk about it, and then there's forgiveness, whatever. But the thing about forgiving yourself is a process. And it's, to me, from my experience, it didn't happen overnight. It's been this continual thing that I have worked on over the years, kind of going from like feeling very, very lonely to feeling very, very whole. But it's been a hard process. It's been a lot of work, a lot of self-awareness, a lot of, just being honest with myself and accepting things as they have been and as they are, and just getting to this point where, sharing myself is the one has been my saving grace when it comes to forgiveness. And I know that's a scary thing for people to hear, but it has worked for me.
I love that. I love that so much because it's sort of like, okay, so we all have these things that we have to heal from, things that sometimes we feel that are going to break us and that we can't come back from. But
Yeah.
it's scary. It's scary to start that process.
Yeah.
What does it look like for somebody who isn't comfortable yet telling their story that will lead to forgiveness? Like, what can help that person?
Writing their story in a journal,
Mm.
and for me, I wasn't scared of getting on stage and telling my story. And that's not true for everybody, and that's okay. I'm not saying that you have to do that, but I think no matter where you are, you can start somewhere. And just writing down your story in a journal and then burning it after. If you're scared someone's going to read it, there's something you can do. That's a place to start. Or find someone that you really trust and share that story that you feel is just way deep down that needs healing, and share it in a safe space. Go to a counselor, start there, start somewhere that it's safe if you're not sure where to begin, because that's what opens like the floodgates to all the other things that you might be holding on to or can't seem to get over the hump with. But there's always a place to start. And even if it's like talking out loud to your recorder on your phone, or videoing yourself talking about the story and keeping it for yourself, or a trusted friend, like I said, there's always something somewhere you can start, and it can be very, very small, but the important thing is to just start.
Hmm. Correct me if I'm wrong, but it sounds like you're sort of saying as well, say it to yourself. Like, don't even think about starting by sharing it with other people.
Right.
So you first need to do it with yourself. And once you get through that, because sometimes people have a hard time even talking about it or thinking about it themselves. Because I know for me personally, I suppressed my feelings for 12 years. And so my audience knows that, but you may not know that yet.
Right.
And
Yeah.
it like destroyed my life. And so just not doing that and having a voice, even
Yeah.
if it is just for yourself, because I think sometimes when we say share your story, and we do think we have to share it with somebody else first. And that sounds like a huge step, right?
Yeah, totally. I mean, that's major vulnerability. But it's in the processing with yourself that you come to accept the story. And if you can accept the story, then it's easier to share with other people when you're ready. And I know, just like even now in my everyday life, even though I love my life, I love my work, I love my family, I love where we live, like there's nothing in my life that I would change, but hard things happen, right? Like relationships sometimes get tough with family members, or stuff from the past comes up, a pattern, or you're challenged with something in a new way and you want to push through it, or a trauma. I mean, there's tons of things that happen in life, in everyday life. And what I have found is that when I start to feel like I am really lonely, or starting to suffer, or to be in pain, that's a good time for me to just talk it out with myself. Like, I'll just go get a shower or a bath, or go write in my journal and just talk it out and process it, so that I can know what's going on inside of me, and can then work with it and deal with it once I know what that is.
Yeah, because it can be a really big breakthrough. We're so hard on ourselves that if
Yeah.
we can get to that,
Yeah.
maybe we'll get to a point where we don't really care what other people think. We just
Exactly.
get it
Yep.
out there.
Yeah, it shifts everything. So it's all about what is in our minds and the stories that our brains are telling us as well. I mean, what we grew up to believe about ourselves and breaking those cycles. And I mean, it's a constant human thing that we are always, going to be doing as long as we're here on this earth. So anyway, it's a part of the process, I suppose.
And nobody escapes this, right? Like sometimes we're in our own issue, our own
Yeah,
problems, our challenge, and we're like, oh my God, it must just be me. What's wrong that I can't, that this is happening to me? But every single person that's alive goes through these things. And I think
absolutely.
we forget,
Yeah.
I think
Yeah.
the more we remember that we're kind of similar in that way, I think the more forgiving we could be with ourselves, right? But okay, so let's say somebody has a story because it's easy for us to say, okay, we need to forgive people, but it's sometimes so hard, and you had mentioned that. So
Yeah.
let's say our story is one where we're not ready to forgive somebody. Like we're
Yeah.
just totally against it. This person ruined my life, whatever it is. We're so angry that we're not there yet. We can't forgive. Why should we push through that? Like, what are the benefits of actually trying it?
Well, I think somebody has to be ready and want. So, like, you start from the place of, do I really want to feel this way? Do I want to feel this resentment? Do I want to feel this anger? Do I want to feel this pain? Do I want to carry this around? And if you don't want to feel those things and you're not attached to feeling that way, you first have to start there.
Hmm.
And if you're not wanting to forgive someone, just forget it. Don't even try. Like, but if you have this deep desire to want to figure it out, then that's when the work begins. And I think the journey to forgiveness is different for every situation. If this is an abusive situation where someone has physically, sexually abused you, and you don't want to be in the sphere with this person ever again, and it's too harmful or whatever, that's a very different forgiveness experience than one with someone who just said something really hurtful or did something really hurtful whom you still want to have a relationship with. So those are two extremes, right? But the process can be similar in that we have to explore our feelings around what hurt us. And if it's something that was super traumatic, like for me, coming out of the closet, I was completely, rejected by my spiritual community and not accepted by my family in the way I wanted to be accepted. And that was a very traumatic, like lifelong thing that I can go back to and still feel if I really want to. And so I went to therapy to work through that. So, and I have been working through that over the years, over and over and over and over. And so, it's just a very different experience than actually, dealing with a person whom I want to have a relationship with, where I can actually go to them and say, hey, you did this. This is what hurt me. How can we move forward? What do you think? What do you feel? And approaching it from that perspective. So I think there's a way to, not to live without resentment, but we have to be very aware and very conscious of the fact and ask ourselves, do we want this feeling in our bodies? Do we want to carry this forward to the end of our days and never actually clear it out and see what can come in? The benefits are that now you can let in more love when you let go of resentment. You can let in more of the things that you want. And until that's cleared, then, there's no space for more love to enter your life.
And we all need more love, let me tell you, especially when
Yeah.
we've been hard on ourselves for so long.
The world needs more love. And there's, I'm just noticing that people are short-tempered. They're, quick to judge. It's a fast-paced society and people are just, kind of off the hinge right now. And it's hard. And everybody's feeling that I don't know what it is. I feel like fear is a good word, or
Uncertainty too. It's just,
uncertainty, lack of presence. And so, yeah,
and I guess we have to, even though these things hurt us, we have to give people benefit of the doubt sometimes.
hmm
Sometimes people don't know how to treat us differently, or sometimes they just don't know what we need to hear, or
yeah,
sometimes they just make a mistake. And if we
yeah,
don't
totally.
open, yeah, if we don't open that door of communication and we just sort of resent, they don't really, we're not giving them a chance to make it right. We're not giving
Yeah,
them a chance to reconcile with themselves. And we might hate them so much, but they might be sitting at home going, oh my God, I wish they would just talk to me so I could explain. Like you just don't always see the other side.
yeah. And you can only own your experience, and that's the only thing that we can actually know for the other person, unless we give them the opportunity to see what our experience has been.
Mm.
So, I mean, a good example of this, the other day, my new 4-year-old daughter, who is wise beyond her years, and she's 4, so any 4-year-old has their tantrums and can't express their feelings or whatever. And I was kind of going through a hard time for a few days because life was busy and I wasn't doing self-care, and I was totally aware of what was going on with me. She was picking up on it, and we kind of got to this point where she was starting to have this experience of not being able to express her feelings.
Mm.
And I said to her, after it happened, I'm like, Merritt, what can I do for you in those moments when I can tell you're angry, mad, sad, frustrated, where you just can't seem to tell me what's going on? And she looked at me and she goes, Mama, just tell me you love me. And I said, I was just like, oh my gosh. And then I said, okay, well, if I tell you I love you and you're still really struggling, what do I do then? And she said,
Mm.
just tell me you love me again.
Oh, I love that you even asked the question. That's the first thing that I'm hearing is that, so that's great that you even asked the question.
Well, thank you. I want to help her, like, and I know that she's got the answers, like she knows her truth. And I'm just here to like help guide her, right? And so the next day, she was having another, like, starting to get upset, frustrated, unable to express, whatever. And I remembered, and I said, Merritt, and I looked at her and I said, I love you. And she got this huge grin on her face, ran across the room, jumped in my arms, and said, Mama, you remembered. Thank you. And that was the end of it.
Wow.
I was like, wow. So, but to this point is that what I took from that was more than just what she needs. It's what we all need. We're in that space of being angry or sad or feeling alone or depressed or rejected or whatever the emotion is. Like,
Mm.
isn't that just a call for love? I mean,
Yes.
don't we all just want to be told that somebody loves you in those moments?
Kids are amazing, aren't
Oh,
they?
I mean, in the next day, I'm getting gas and about to pull out, and this guy is like, honk, 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 right behind me. Get out of the way. I'm not going fast enough for him, right? And I'm like, my first instinct was like, I'm just gonna sit here. But then I was like, I heard Merritt's voice, my daughter, and I was like, you know what? He's probably just having a really bad day. And it's okay. Like, just give him grace, move along. And just those little things, I think the energy we're giving others and we're sending out makes such a difference, and people are just at at the at the edge right now. And
And sometimes it's not our first instinct, like you said.
it's
Like your
not
first instinct was kind of like, okay, how can I even?
defensive, right? But then you can remember quickly, like, oh wait, no, I don't want to be that way. I don't want to feel that way.
What I heard in that story too, when you were talking about your daughter, was that she wasn't afraid to tell you what she needed, and you
Right.
remembered. And when you did that for her, she felt heard,
Yeah.
And it sounds so simple, but how many of us go through our day and go through life and years where we feel
Mhm.
like we never get heard. We never feel validated, right?
Well,
So
yeah,
it's
totally.
tough. Yeah.
Yeah.
So you
Yeah,
teach people how to get up and speak about their story.
I do.
Okay.
Yeah.
So do you have, without giving names or anything, do you have like maybe an example that you want to share with us of how doing that, how getting up and telling a story for somebody changed how they felt about themselves, changed their life? Is there anything that you can share
Gosh.
with us?
Well, I will say that I work with a lot of really amazing speakers
Mm,
and amazing people and thought leaders, athletes, celebrities, whoever it is. It does not matter who I'm working with. The experience is always the same. Whenever we write a new story into their script, even if it's an old story, if we write it in a new way
mm.
and they get to tell it and share it with a group of people, the experience afterward, and I hear this every time after the speech, I can't wait to do that again. I can't
Wow.
wait to do that again. Because, I mean, the fear is always to be vulnerable, right? Because you're afraid you're not going to be accepted.
Mm.
But when you see that people respond to vulnerability, because they do, 99.99999% of the time, they respond to vulnerability and they are craving that connection. I feel like people are craving vulnerability right now and connection with others. And you see that in your audience, then it's part of the healing process. It's part of making a difference. It's a part of service. It's a part of giving back, like what you were talking about earlier when we met. It's that same feeling that as a speaker you get. You feel like you're serving, but you're also receiving that acceptance in return. So for people that I work with, it's a beautiful experience and very, very fulfilling for them. And so I love helping people write their stories and share them on stage. I
That's
really do.
incredible. That's incredible. Because I can tell you, for people like me, I get, the sweats, I get the, really nervous and all of that.
Mhm.
And then I get up there, and the moment that I remember who I'm doing it for, and the moment that I start to connect with my own story and my emotion, I don't feel that way anymore. I'm just like, I think people will understand my pain. I think people will get what I'm saying.
They
And
will.
it makes it so much easier. And it's not about how you look and how you sound. It's about getting the feeling across, right?
Right. Yep, absolutely.
And it
Yeah.
does make
And that's a big part of, storytelling that I teach too. I created a vulnerable storytelling method because it's of that piece of where you're actually sharing what you're feeling underneath of the circumstance that you're sharing with others. And if you can't get to that phase of the story, then it's not going to mean as much. I mean, you can still tell a good story and avoid that part. But if you're not saying, hey, this made me feel, scared, this really hurt my feelings. I mean, it can be a super simple statement, but if you're not getting underneath the surface and actually letting people into your experience, then it can't be nearly as impactful.
and very healing.
Yes, absolutely. Because you're honoring your experience. How can that not be healing?
Yeah. And you just don't know who's listening. You don't know who's sitting in the audience who that's going to change their life. They don't have to go
Yeah.
through the exact same situation to have empathy, to have the feeling behind it be similar.
Right. Yeah. It's almost like a validation too for somebody, like you said, even though our stories are so different or whatever, that validation of hearing someone else speak truth makes your experience feel more real. It makes you feel more enlivened as the listener. And then, okay, hey, I get to validate that. I get to feel this. Now I feel connected to this human being. And then, I mean, how is there not something positive that's going to come from that?
Yeah, I completely agree. That's why I love having these types of conversations, because I know, and most of us, we start off in this place where we're too afraid to share, but we want to because we really know it's going to help us. But at the same time, it's like scary, and we don't like scary
Yeah.
things. And so we don't talk about them, right?
Yeah.
But the difference between somebody before and somebody after they go through this process is like so different.
Mm-hmm.
you start to grow and you start to be able to accept other people's, you know, stories and see
Yeah,
people in a different way and have more empathy, right?
exactly. Yep. That's the power of storytelling.
I love it.
That's why I love it so much. It's a wonderful, wonderful mode of, communication, connecting.
Yeah. So, Megan, tell us about the note that you got from Desmond Tutu. I
Oh
need to
gosh.
find out about this. So you were doing a talk on forgiveness? Is that what?
Yeah. Yeah. I did a talk on forgiveness,
Yes.
and it's on my website actually. And it was a short one. It was like a TED style talk. And yeah, the video got to him and he sent me a personal note.
How cool is
So,
that?
yeah. Yeah, I know, right? One of my all-time favorite heroes. And my wife and I were actually scheduled to have tea with him
Oh, really?
in 2000, and I think I was 2017.
Oh,
And
wow.
then her dad got sick and we weren't able to make the trip, and we just never revisited it. And I am
Oh,
so regretful. If I have one regret, that is it.
wow. You never know, though. You never
That's
know.
true. That's true. That's
You
true.
never know. All right. So tell me okay. So if people want to work with you, what is the best
Mhm.
way to contact you? Like, what is the best way? So you said you have a mastery, sorry,
Yeah.
you offer on your website, so different programs, different coaching programs, different
Yeah.
speaking programs. What is the
Mhm.
best entryway into your world?
That's a good question. There's not much space right now, honestly. I'm totally full right now. Um, and
That's a
the
good
reasons,
problem to have.
yeah, and it's fun. I'm actually so I did started a contract work with the talent agency that represents me coaching all of their talent because it's
Oh,
all
wow.
speakers. And so that has led into a very full load, where I'm now in a leadership position at the agency. So I really only can take a private client at a time.
Mhm.
And those are lined up right now. And so it's really hard to get me right now. Unless you come through the agency and you want to be
Right.
represented as a speaker or something like that, then you've got me all the time. Um, so really, I mean, if people really want to get in contact with me, they can email me. I'm pretty easygoing and happy to answer some questions for people if they have any. But yeah, as far as working with me, that can be more of a challenge right now. Um, so anyway.
Well, we can start with your books
Yeah,
for
there's the
sure.
books. I've got books. I've got a new one coming out in January.
Yes, that's exciting.
There's content on my website. I write blogs. Follow me on social, all that stuff.
Yes, your blogs are amazing, actually. I've been reading some of them.
Oh, thank you.
So, if somebody is starting out on their own, any advice you have for them while they're, getting comfortable with the idea of starting to share their story? Is there anything that they can do to maybe raise their confidence or even if they're not ready, like you said, you don't have to be ready to speak to somebody else. Although
Mhm.
hopefully it ends, it gets there because it's
Yeah.
important to share your message so that other people can also benefit from it. But when
Mhm.
you're starting on your own and speaking your truth to yourself,
Yeah.
is there any advice for somebody who maybe is trying to do it on their own?
I guess it really depends on what their goal is. If they're
Hmm.
doing it for their own healing work, I would say, one of the most powerful things I ever did was just write out my life story. Because I think that's a super powerful way to, just get out a journal and just write. Or if you don't like to write, like tell it to a camera or, record it in some way that it's meaningful for you. So, it just really depends on what someone's goal is with it. If you're a speaker or want to be a speaker or want to have a platform, then there's some really great books out there. Storyworthy is one of them. That's one that I always go back to. There's also my storytelling method. If you want to learn how to tell a really good story, it's free on my website under free content.
Great.
People can watch that and understand what telling a good story is like. So if you wanted to refine it and share it with others, then it's a really good way to kind of take people on a journey and learn how to do it well, because nothing's worse than hearing a speaker tell a story and your eyes glaze over because it's so boring. It's got to have, all those components, but also the components that are meaningful for healing.
Mm.
So that's kind of what I focus on. And then, just constantly practicing. I mean, this is what I do with speakers, is just like write it out, script it out, just practice, 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 so that you can get so comfortable with it that you embody that story. And then when you're on stage, or you are going to share it with whoever, there's not a ton of emotion there. There's still emotion there, but you're not so attached because you've processed it
Yes, that's
so much.
important. Yeah,
Yeah.
I've that's happened to me. Yeah, and
Yeah.
it's just so much, and then you just kind of get confused, and it doesn't come out the way you want it to, right?
Right.
You feel so much. See, it's funny because so we were talking about how you're an author, and I wrote a book not too long ago. And when I started, I was like, "There's no way I'm going to share this with anybody." And I would just write it on napkins, and it was about my father. And so when he was dying, I interviewed him,
Oh, wow.
and yeah, and I was just like writing really fast, and it took me a long time, but he died at Christmas, and so every Christmas I would pull this out and read some of it and then start to write, and then I would get so overwhelmed I'd put it away. So
Mm.
15 years later, I finally finished writing everything I wanted to write. And I let a
Wow.
friend read it, and she said, "You should turn this into a book because I think it's going to help somebody else." And I'm like, "Are you kidding? Who's going to want to hear about my story?" And they're like, "But you never know." So you may start off by just, like you said, sharing it into, a video or writing it down, never thinking you want to share it. But then when your
Yeah.
healing takes place, sometimes you realize you may look at it just like I did and say,
Yeah.
"Hey, you know what? I'm in a different place now. I feel so much better about this story that I do think I should share it." And you don't have to make those decisions right at the top.
Yeah. No, yeah, totally. And I am a huge advocate for people sharing their stories, because I know that it's healing for them and it's healing for the people hearing them. So I'm a huge advocate for people, doing that in safe places. And, I mean, there's a whole process. Like, if you're not feeling confident and secure enough, then don't go stand on stage and do it, right? But if you are in a place where you feel ready for that, then you definitely should, because that's is, to me, what changes the world, is hearing each other's stories, because it's the thing that connects us. It's the only thing that really helps us understand each other in a deeper way.
I love
So
I
I'm a
love
huge advocate for that.
I love that so much. And like even when you were talking about when you came out, right? And I may be listening to your story and not necessarily be able to connect with it, but I connect with other parts of the story. I connect
Right.
with being, feeling all of the things that some of the things that you were feeling in a different way. So it
Right.
doesn't mean, it doesn't mean that we have to fully understand somebody's story.
Totally.
It means
Yeah.
we have to accept that it's their story and not judge them. I think that's a
Yeah.
huge difference.
Yeah, I totally agree. Understanding that I think that's a lot of what's wrong within the world, is like we try to understand things we cannot understand because they are not our experience.
Mhm.
The key is the acceptance piece. And the only way to accept people who are different than we are, or see life differently, or whatever, is if we hear what they have to say and they hear what we have to say. But we need to hear that humanness, that vulnerability piece. And if we're not sharing that piece, it's always going to be hard to bridge a gap between two people who are so different.
Yeah, like so my best friend and I, 45 years. So I turned 50 this year. We've been friends for 45 years. We are like
That's
two
awesome.
completely, I know, right? I'm so lucky. Two completely different people, completely different. And she'll get upset about things that I wouldn't, and I get upset about things that she wouldn't. But it's all about, what does she need to hear in that moment? It's like when you asked your daughter, right?
Mhm.
So you might have asked another child, it would have been a different answer. So sometimes
Right.
it's not, yeah, like you just said, not understanding necessarily, but just empathizing and making them feel like you're hearing them. Because ultimately, we want people to do that to us.
Right.
And if we
Yeah.
feel that more, then we'll tell our story more, you know?
Yeah, absolutely. All about validation and being seen.
Love
It
it.
really is. We
I love
all
what
want
you do.
that. Oh, thank you. I do too.
I think it's so powerful. I think it's so amazing because you're changing two sides, you know? I see that you're helping people come out, tell their story in the best possible, impactful way that they can to help them,
Yeah.
but also all of these people who are listening to them. You're sort of helping both sides, right?
Yeah. Yep.
So, and actually in a third way, because then you're also helping validate yourself and
Yeah.
feeling good about,
Sure.
and when you love what you do, it's not work, right?
Yeah, totally. It's exciting.
So, is there anything we didn't talk about today that you would like to talk about before we, get ready to end our
No,
conversation?
this has been wonderful.
Oh, I'm glad. I think
No, this has been
that's
great. Yeah.
that's awesome. So, your book, your new one, January
Mhm.
2023, where can we find
Mhm.
it?
You'll be able to find it everywhere. Online, Barnes and Noble, Amazon, all the things on my
Great.
website. It's called Held and Free, and it's coming out of your story is the subtitle. So it's all about the power of storytelling, and it's my memoir actually. So I actually take you on a journey, a storytelling journey through my story, but I keep in mind this how storytelling is like the connector for all healing with yourself and healing with others and moving forward. So I talk about it from the advocacy space as far as connecting with others and
It's like unfolding, like you're unfolding the
yeah,
process, sort of.
exactly. Yeah.
That's awesome.
Yeah. So it's been a challenging book because it is very vulnerable,
Mm.
um, but a very healing book for me.
Congratulations.
So thank you. Thank you. Thank you.
That's awesome. That's
Yeah.
awesome. So, if anybody wants to find you, what's your website?
MeaganO'Nan.com, MEAGANONAN.
Perfect.
And yeah, all my stuff is there.
Good. Yeah, go to those free resources and check her out.
Yeah, definitely.
Thank you so much for everything that you said. And, also just forgiveness is a part of us not only healing, but giving back to ourselves, right? Like we have to love ourselves. We should practice self-care and self-healing. And I think this is a big part of it. And I think people forget that sometimes. I think
Yeah.
people sometimes think of self-care as just having bubble baths. And to me, it's more than that. It's the forgiveness portion. It's the putting up boundaries sometimes. It's loving ourselves. There's so much more than just all the stuff that just feels good on the outside, right? So I think this is a big piece. I think this is a big part of that. So thank you
Yeah.
for coming and sharing your wisdom and talking to us today about it.
Yeah, my pleasure. Thanks for having me. This was a fun conversation for sure.
Well, thank you. I loved it as well. Thank you for tuning in to this week's episode. If you enjoyed what you heard, please subscribe or leave a review. See you next week on the Giving Starts With You podcast.